If you're looking for some heavy vehicle support for your Space Marine army, this video is for you because we are gonna look at my top 3 Space Marine Dreadnoughts now in 10th edition. Third place in my opinion is Contemptor Dreadnought, a very solid all-round distraction option for 170 points. He fits in a very good spot where you have already decided what are going to be your main damage dealing options when you already have some stuff to hold the board and you just want to add some spice and maybe confuse your opponent a bit without spending a ton of points. And that's where I think Contemptor Dreadnought might be quite good because he is, as I said already, a very good all-round option. Defensive stats are on par with similar platforms, so toughness 9 and 2+ save. He also has a 5+ invulnerable save for some rare cases. In 9th edition it's much less important than 10th than it was in 9th because we don't have really that much in terms of AP4 guns, and even when we do have some AP4, usually you'll get some cover. A bit more important in melee, where there can be no cover, so 5+ invulnerable save is a nice addition. His melee is the same as with the Redemptor, which in 9th edition would be a very good complement. In 10th edition, not so much, but still it's a good profile, very nice against Terminators, some stuff like Wraith Guard, and it can punch up into vehicles as well. Shooting isn't best for this model. It's more of a scare-off choice than do actual damage, but I think still multi-melt is better than the autocannon because only 6 shots at strength 7 AP1 with devastating wounds is nothing to write home about. Multi-melt at least will do some reliable damage up close, which because of melee, that's where you want the Dreadnought to be actually. His main feature and reason for taking him though is his even in death I still serve ability, where he can come back from death on the 2+ once per game at the end of the phase with D6 wounds remaining, and that's a colossal buff for the Dreadnought. A very, very powerful ability because you can then knowing that use him for some suicide missions where you know he won't survive, but he will be able to soak up damage and then potentially stand back up and do some more damage, and that will also confuse your opponent's target priority because who wants to shoot a thing which is not really easy to kill in the first place, but then only for it to stand back up again in most of the cases. In terms of synergies, everything that Space Marines have works well with him, like the only in death does duty and stratagem. You can fight with him on death and then stand back up, and I don't think there is something in the rules that prevents that, at least as far as I understand it. Also, the doctrines work very well with him because of his movement 6, and you really want to advance him in the first turn potentially to get some distance, cross some distance, and be able to reach out with that 18-inch multi-melta, and then potentially advance in charge when your army needs it. Also, Storm Raven is great to carry this guy because really you don't want him to be stomping those 6 inches a turn. You want him to be as fast as possible, and if you manage to transport him right into the midst of the battle and to make your opponent make those difficult choices whether he wants or she wants to engage your Dreadnought or something else in your army, then the Storm Raven is going to help with that massively. Next is the Blisters Dreadnought, the dedicated ranged threat platform, the same price as the Contemptor, 170 points. He essentially has 4 good anti-tank shots, 2 last cannon shots at strength 12 AP3 damage D6 +1, so the Godhammer style like the Land Raider, and 2 shots at strength 10 AP2 damage D6 with the crack. Obviously D6 is not perfect, I would much prefer the D6 +1 at least, but that's what we have. Best part about him is probably the range. 48 inches is great to make sure that you are out of range of a lot of medium and small low-range guns that your opponent might have, so it helps with his survivability. He also has full rerolls to hit against targets that are not below half strength, so good for some targeting freedom. You don't have to always shoot at your Oath of Moment target. Obviously, you don't get rerolls to wound, but you have good strength, so if you're targeting, say, something at T9, you're already wounding the target on 3s, which is good enough. Obviously, that's only for cases when shooting at the Oath of Moment target is very bad from the target's priority standpoint. Really need to have a good reason not to use full reroll to hit and wound. His move 8, which isn't bad for positioning because you want to be able to rotate around the ruin where you've been hiding behind hopefully and use your firepower on something that deserves it. And obviously with doctrines it's also great because you can, if you want to, if it's applicable for this particular turn, you can advance and shoot with your Devastator Doctrine. Defensively, it's typical Redemptor profile, toughness 10, 2+ save, 12 wounds, and it's okay considering the range of the guns. You don't want anything to be touching this guy in combat, and hopefully you will be able to protect him with your other assets, because he's not there to fight in melee. Thanks to Big Guns Avatar, it's not such a big problem if he gets touched in combat, but still, you don't want him to be fought against in melee, especially with good melee weapons. OC4, so he can be a decent home objective holder, and with his range he will be able to reach out and touch almost anything within the line of sight. Next, Redemptor Dreadnought, the king of versatility, my number one in terms of dreadnoughts. I believe this is the must-have model for almost all Space Marine lists. Yes, there are some very reliable, very good options like the Salvation Marines, the Hell Blasters, but still, the Redemptor combines in himself so many things that I believe the price is right. 225 points to be exact, good all-round melee profile, the same as the Contemptor. I'm not going to run through it again. Not as good as a 9th, but still good enough for almost all applications. I wish there was something to fight against hordes here, because yes, you still have that problem where a 10-man squad charges your Redemptor, or you need to charge that troop squad, and then you can only maximum kill 5 in your fight phase. Good shooting, I mean really good shooting, even better than melee in my humble opinion, especially with Oath of Moment. He's just the perfect unit to actually pump all of your shots into the Oath of Moment target, because the plasma is now d6+1 shots, so you get one more shot than in 9th edition. Obviously, strength 9 is not optimal against tougher targets now when vehicles are toughness 9, 10, 11, 12 and higher, but with full rerolls, wounding on 5s is usually reliable enough, especially with AP4, which is very rare nowadays in 9th edition, and damage 3, again, very good reliability, even against targets like Avatar with half damage, you still get those 2 damage through in every shot. Plus, you get 8 shots of 501, which is strength 5 AP0 damage 1, as you might have guessed, with Gatling cannon under Slan, and those shots do devastating ones. So, considering that you'll probably hit with 7, you will be doing about 1 or 2, maybe sometimes if you're lucky, 3 mortal wounds on every volley with this gun when you have full rerolls to wound with Oath. And you also get D3 shots of strength 8 AP1 damage 2 and anti-fly 2+ from your Icarus pod, and you're not paying anything for it like you did in 9th edition, so you get it for free. And also some extra shots with Stormbolters, which is nice. So he can engage almost any category of targets in the game very reliably and quite efficiently. I would still recommend not to put all your anti-tank eggs into one basket with Redemptors. Even if you plan to run 3, I would still have something like an Eradicator squad, or maybe Devastators, Desolation Marines, anything else, just to have that extra punch into tougher targets. But as your general damage dealing platform, Redemptor is hard to beat. But his biggest advantage is his durability. Even though his mainframe is still T10, 12 wounds, 2+ save, which isn't bad, don't get me wrong, 2+ save in the era where all the guns or melee weapons have essentially -1 AP, he's very strong, especially with how cover works for vehicles. So even against multi-meltas out of cover, you'll get at least a 6-up, and with cover you will have the essential 5+ invulnerable save. But -1 damage is what makes Redemptor stand out to me, in my humble opinion. -1 damage when almost everything in the game lost -1 damage, where 2 damage guns are now again one of the most reliable ways to do damage to targets, because they are in that sweet spot of some AP, 2 damage, a lot of shots, and strength high enough to be wounding targets on 5s, and with hopefully rerolls you are very efficient with that kind of firepower or melee output. It's the same as how Ravagers worked back in 8th edition for Drukhari. If you remember, running the Ravagers with disintegrator cannons and with rid of the Living Muse, I think the relic was, where you get reroll ones to hit from Archon and reroll ones to wound from that relic. It was one of the most reliable ways to do damage to almost anything in the game. So that's precisely why damage 2 stuff is so dangerous now, and that's precisely why Redemptors are so great, because you will be not immune, but a very annoying target for anything that is damage 2. Plus, don't forget that a lot of guns, a lot of very efficient weapons also rely on Devastating Wounds ability, and as per the rules commentary, the Devastating Wounds ability is also affected by -1 damage. So if you are being targeted by, say, Possessed from the Chaos Space Marine index, you will get half of the mortal wounds that they would be dealing to you because of your -1 damage ability. Custodies are on the rise as well. They are very prominent on the tournament scene if you're planning to run something competitive, or if you have Custodies players in your local meta. I seriously doubt that you will be able to find a more difficult to deal with unit for a Custodies player than their Redemptor Dreadnought, and more annoying because those d6+1 shots with the plasma are no joke for Custodies, even when they turn on -1 damage, which is 2 CP. Let me know what you run for your anti-tank and melee options. Do you think there is a more versatile thing? I don't believe that at least in Space Marine units, but maybe I'm wrong and you have found something more interesting. Let me know, and I'll see you next time.